I had a horrible PTSD in 2007, and I used to ride around on the subway late at night and pick fights because I just wanted to get beaten up. And a friend of mine introduced me to cage fighting, and I started going to this for catharsis. And first I was fighting, and I'm also a really bad fighter. I just kind of slap a lot. But I ended up photographing it, and it was like vicious, and there were so many vets there too. It was just like what we all needed after coming back to the States. So now that we're back in a peaceful country, we just really enjoy beating the crap out of each other. These guys knocked themselves out at the same time. That's the mat after a match. And then I ended up like turning around at these fights when it started being less therapeutic for me and more about a story, and photographing the people who watch them. So the next big kind of project that I worked on, where it was like a huge difference in terms of how I worked, was the oil spill off of Louisiana. So I was like, how can I photograph this in a way that like people will want to look at this story? And I started just doing these really abstracted pictures of the oil on the sea. And just like the oil was really beautiful. Because that's an amazing thing about photography. If the light is right and the composition is spot on, you could photograph anything. You could photograph a clump of dirt, and you can make it look beautiful. And so I was trying to make something look really beautiful out of something really horrible. I've ended up spending like the last 5 years in Afghanistan, and I've never done an embed there. Never I spent any time with U.S. or NATO soldiers in Afghanistan. I've always just hung out with Afghans, and I just walk around the country basically on my own. Like again, it's a homogenous society. I'm a big, tall, white guy, and I walk around, and I have these huge cameras, and they're like, "Oh, there's a photographer." So it's like, how can I do something different? How can I take pictures, remain a little less obvious about what I'm doing? But so I'm just like, I walk around Afghanistan now with just my iPhone. And I think that woman's bag says living in paradise. You know, it's just the beauty of a place. Like, I love Afghanistan. It's a beautiful country in many ways. Like, the landscapes are great and the people are amazing. And sometimes they do really weird things, like you have to walk into a grocery store through a woman's mouth. So I took this with me into Libya. Basically, if anything deserves to be photographed with a mobile phone camera, it's something out of the Arab Spring, which that entire movement was brought on by people with smartphones and with social media. And this aesthetic actually works because this is what the actual Libyans and Syrians and Egyptians and Tunisians used to get their message out. And like people thought I was nuts because, you know, I'm on the front lines with my phone camera. So this is when I knew I kind of preferred my iPhone to my Canon. This is an impacting mortar going off about 10 feet in front of me. Rebel fashion. These guys are for the most part idiots because you can't load that in any gun at all. So he would have to go back if he really needed ammunition and replace all those rounds in one direction. I mean, this is such an issue that people forget, but like, as much as I love the Libyans and the people who are fighting for their freedom, like, incredibly racist. And anyone who was black was a mercenary for Gaddafi. Anyone who was black. So they just, like, anyone who was, like, working as a janitor, as a mechanic, which is mostly, like, these migrant workers from Niger and Ghana, they would just arrest them and throw them in jail, even if they didn't do anything. This was at a massacre site where they put about 150 people into a room and threw 3 grenades in. And then everyone burned to death. So, of course, like, I didn't want to shirk my responsibilities to my photo agency by just photographing with an iPhone. So I did everything in the traditional sense as well. And these are pretty fresh. Not too many people have seen these. And the thing with Libya, this is like the most violent war I've ever covered, because there was no public affairs officer or press officer like the Americans have, or even the Afghans have a press officer and the Iraqis do, and like they're, you can't go forward of this line. You could do whatever you wanted in Libya. This is Gaddafi's daughter, Aisha. This is her wedding chair. It's gold, and the face was sculpted to look like her. And this is like the love seat that she and her groom sat in when they got married. There were too many bodies like killed by snipers all over Tripoli to pick up at any one time, so a lot of people would go around and just sprinkle lime on them. So it was really weird because you'd have these these weird wintertime kind of bodies covered in snow. Look, everywhere you look, there was lime everywhere. And it was strangely beautiful and really disturbing. Just another indication of how stupid rebels are. A recoilless rifle is not meant to fire horizontally. It's meant, 30 degrees, 45 degrees. So when they fired this gun horizontally, it destroyed the truck. And you could see the guy on the right is just laughing because it's ridiculous. And it didn't hit anything. And this is in Martyr Square celebrating. So that's me in a nutshell.